here we are in the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences under the Oscars celebrating Kung Fu films for the 40th anniversary of Enter the Dragon, hosted by the Academy. You must all be incredibly psyched to be witnessing this. I mean, this is kind of a remarkable thing. I would say probably over the age of 5, everyone in the world today knows who Bruce Lee is. Everybody knows what Kung Fu is. I've seen people in the most remote corners of the earth pulling Kung Fu moves and making Bruce Lee sounds. I've been to places like Sadr City in Baghdad and rural Transylvania where people have never seen an Asian person before, and little kids will run up to me and say, Bruce Lee, Bruce Lee. When you watch The Matrix and they take the plug out of the back of Neo's head and he says, I know Kung Fu, we all know what that means. But 45 years ago, just before all these posters that you've seen and before this movie was made, no one outside of Chinatown or martial arts circles knew what Kung Fu was. And Bruce Lee was just another martial arts teacher and out-of-work TV actor whose show was canceled, struggling to make a living. So what happened? Within 5 years, Kung Fu had exploded onto our cultural landscape. There was a TV series, there were disco songs, bubblegum cards, there was a Hanna-Barbera cartoon on Saturday morning, Elvis did martial arts on stage. As one of our panelists here has said, suddenly there was a Kung Fu studio in every small town in America. Parents took their kids to martial arts on Saturday morning like they were taking them to baseball practice. This all seems really normal to us all now, but this was completely new and strange in 1973. Kung Fu films didn't just change the way Hollywood worked, how we made action films, how we perceived and marketed foreign films. They also changed the way this country looked at Asians and all minorities. In the 1960s, we were still making yellow-face movies in Hollywood. Mickey Rooney played a caricature Japanese in Breakfast at Tiffany's with big fake buck teeth and a crazy accent. And Bruce Lee played a butler. He was a kick-ass Kung Fu butler, but still, he was relegated to the role of a Chinese butler. Bruce Lee didn't invent the Kung Fu film. Chinese filmmakers have been making Kung Fu films since the silent film era. You could say that martial arts films are to China and to Hong Kong what Westerns are to America and Hollywood. It's the genre that is uniquely Chinese. It particularly embodies Chinese ideals and culture. Bruce Lee, I'm sure you all know, was actually a pretty big child star in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong film industry. But it was his hope and dream to become a global star in Hollywood. And for those of us in this room, in this business, I think what is particularly interesting is that Hollywood couldn't figure out what to do with Bruce Lee. When Bruce Lee said he wanted to be a bigger star than his friends James Coburn and Steve McQueen, they laughed at him. Not to his face, but they laughed at him. Bruce Lee knew all these people. He knew people at the very center of our business. He knew the biggest movie stars in the world. He knew film producers. He knew the head of a major studio, Warner Brothers. I don't know if you know this, but Roman Polanski hired Bruce Lee to be his fitness trainer. These people respected his talents. They recognized his charisma, but there was a belief, and it's amazing because it's actually memorialized in internal memos, that there was simply no way a person of color could ever be a movie star, a major box office draw. That's not the most remarkable thing about the story. I think the most remarkable thing is that Bruce Lee, despite this, persevered, endured, and found a way to show his talent to the world. The huge success of the Bruce Lee films in Asia and then around the world caused Hollywood to take notice. And to Hollywood's credit, they did what Hollywood does best. They instantly changed course 180 degrees, showed Bruce their love, and got ahead of the wave. And overnight, and this is amazing, between 1972 and 1973, nearly 20% of the films released in American theaters were Kung Fu films. You know, if you look at the picture of the Warner Brothers marketing department in 1973, it looks like the cast of the Lawrence Welk show. It was like Opie and Harriet at Warner Brothers, and they were tasked with releasing these new movies that came from Hong Kong that were in Chinese, that had guys jumping around and screaming and hacking each other. They had no idea what to do with it. And in the file, in the marketing file, I found a clipping from the New York Times about a Warner Brothers screening in Harlem of Five Fingers of Death. During the film, someone came into the theater with a .22 pistol and tried to rob the concession stand. and 5 members of the audience, incredibly amped up after seeing their first kung fu film, ran out, beat the guy up, unarmed, took his gun away from him, and held him until the police arrived. The power of kung fu. The best thing, the punchline for me is the Warner Brothers marketing department put a note on the clipping saying, what do we do with this? Should we release a press release? Is this a press release? Should we be calling the press about this? Bruce Lee became an inspiration not just to me, but to generations of young minority actors, musicians, filmmakers, martial artists, not just because of his physical mastery, but because of his powerful defiance, his innate dignity, his grace, and his passion. Bruce Lee refused to be belittled, he refused to be marginalized, and he refused to be dismissed. He commanded our attention, he commanded the frame, he demanded respect. He had a power and magnetism that few people have ever had. Kung Fu films changed America, and they changed the world. So I want to say thank you, Bruce Lee, thank you, the producers of Enter the Dragon, thank you, the Hong Kong film industry and Warner Brothers, all the Kung Fu practitioners who toiled in obscurity and suffered making these films. And I want to thank the Academy for preserving these posters from this very special moment in our history. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight.